A wonderful and marvelous doing of the Lord. In verse 14, the Lord say, is anything too marvelous or wonderful for the Lord? Every experience of Christ is marvelous in our eyes. It is a wonderful doing of the Lord. How could Sarah have brought forth Isaac? It was humanly impossible. If that had happened to us, it would have been a wonderful and marvelous thing in our eyes. Christian experiences are always like this because the Christian life is a life of impossibilities. How marvelous it is that all the impossibilities become possibilities with Christ. We can do what other people cannot do, and we can be what others cannot be because Christ is marvelous and wonderful in our experience of Him. Concerning the destruction of Sodom, Abraham walking with God to bring him on the way. The second revelation that Abraham received concerned the destruction of Sodom. After enjoying such intimate fellowship with Abraham, God and the two angels were satisfied, strengthened, and refreshed. Verse 16 says that, Then the man rose up from thence and looked towards Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. Abraham walked with them for a certain distance to conduct them, to send them away. Often when guests come to visit us, we walk them out to their car after their visit, seeing them on their way. Abraham's walking with his visitors was like one sending his friend away. God not hiding his intention from Abraham. As Abraham was bringing God on his way, the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? God could not hide his intention from Abraham, but told him of his intention to judge Sodom, saying, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me. If not, I will know. God's heart was concerned about Lot, but he could do nothing for him without an intercessor. As we shall see in the next message, God here was seeking for an intercessor. Although God did not mention Lot's name, he knew within his heart that Abraham understood what he was doing. God and Abraham spoke to one another in a mysterious way, neither of them mentioning Lot's name. The outsiders did not understand what they meant, but they each understood, remaining in the presence of God. Verse 22 says, And the men turned their face from thence and went towards Sodom. But Abraham remained still standing before the Lord. When the two angels left, Abraham did not tell the Lord goodbye. No, he remained standing before the Lord. As we shall see, the purpose of his standing before the Lord was for intercession. In Genesis 18, we see that Abraham, a circumcised man, had peace with God. Although Abraham did not expect such a visitation, God appeared to him in the form of a mortal man, conversing with him as with a friend. There was nothing religious about such intimate fellowship. In that fellowship, Abraham received revelation from God positively concerning the birth of Isaac and negatively concerning the destruction of Sodom. Then, after the angels had left for Sodom, Abraham remained in the presence of God. God had found a man to whom he could commit what was on his heart, a man to respond to his heart's intention and echo his heart's desire. In this chapter, we see that the sweetest and most intimate experience of God is like what we have with our most intimate friend. Life study of Genesis message 51, living in the fellowship with God, a glorious intercession, a glorious intercession. In this message, we come to another seed of the divine revelation sown in the book of Genesis, the seed of intercession. In the first 17 chapters of Genesis, there is no record of any intercession, although we may suppose that Melchizedek was interceding behind the scene for Abraham. There is no record of this. The first clear mention of intercession in the Bible is in Genesis 18, where we see that Abraham was the first intercessor. The record of intercession is not simply a seed, for it contains a certain amount of development. In Genesis 18, we not only have a story of intercession, but a clear revelation of the basic principles of intercession. Intercession is a great thing in the Bible. Without it, God's economy cannot be accomplished. The excellent ministry of Christ today as our kingly and divine high priest is a ministry of intercession. Romans chapter 8 verse 34 and Hebrews chapter 7 verse 25 both tell us that Christ is interceding for us. Since this matter of intercession is so important, we must devote an entire message to it, mainly concerning the basic principles of intercession. According to God's revelation, the first basic principle of intercession is that it must be according to God's revelation. The only intercession that counts in the eyes of God is that which is according to His revelation. This means that proper intercession is not initiated by us, but by God in His revelation. This is clearly portrayed in Genesis 18. Abraham did not wake up one morning concerned for Lot and then kneel down to pray to the one on the throne in heaven regarding him. No, while Abraham was sitting at his tent door to cool himself in the heat of the day, God came to him in the form of a mortal man. Since God did not come to Abraham in his glory with his majesty, Abraham did not recognize at first that it was Jehovah God who was visiting him. Eventually, Abraham realized that this one was the very God. Nevertheless, Abraham was not terrified. He was very restful, conversing with God as with an intimate friend. This conversation must have lasted for several hours, for it took time to prepare the meal to eat it. When God and the two angels were about to leave, Abraham did not bid them goodbye, but conducted them on their way, probably walking with them for a good distance. Here we see that our God is not only a loving God, but also a testing God. Although He loves us and knows everything, He often tests us. He knows our heart, the innermost part of our being, but He often says nothing. By testing, He draws out what is within us.